This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. One reality competition series recently showcased Connecticut talent in a new way. 4 of the 16 contestants on the latest season of RuPaul's Drag Race were born or raised in Connecticut. Today, we're revisiting our mid-season conversations with Loosey LaDuca and Robin Fierce, who joined Amethyst and Jax as our Connecticut contingent on the show. During the series reunion in April, Connecticut Lieutenant Governor Susan Bysowitz and members of the LGBTQ plus caucus patched in with a message.
So thank you for representing our state, for showcasing your charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent, and for reminding everyone that freedom of expression is a human right.
And now it's time to remind all lawmakers across the country,
love wins!
Ahead, Loosey and Robin discuss how they discovered drag, developed their artistry, and why they're determined to confront misunderstanding by showcasing drag as a force for good. Joining me first is Ansonia-based drag queen Loosey LaDuca. You can join the conversation by finding us on Facebook or Twitter at Where We Live. Loosey, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So, just want to jump straight into it. How are you feeling after coming back home from taping?
I feel great. It's definitely an adjustment. What is pretty wild is that we filmed the show quite a bit ago. We filmed it over the summer. And so it was a weird time in my life where I knew that we were sitting on all this footage and then I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And so now that the show is finally out and airing, it feels really nice to sort of see the fruits of our labors from so many months ago.
I cannot imagine that burden, especially in our no spoilers world, how much pressure you have wanting to talk about something especially so exciting. And I hear that a lot. You know, a lot of people tape stuff that's like so many months ago and you kind of forget moments. But I have a sneaky suspicion that you probably have had a very unforgettable experience being on RuPaul. And I wanted to ask, the show teaches you a lot about yourself. And once again, no spoilers, of course. But can you share any lessons you've learned through the competition?
I think that what I learned is that when you're put under immense pressure, because the show is, as much as it's a fun experience, it's also quite a bit of pressure because you're being judged, and that can be really, really difficult. But what you have to do, for me personally, is that I just remembered my mantra of kindness is my armor. So if I remained kind through the entire competition, it helped me to know that no matter what I see on TV, I know that I can stand behind it. And I know that ego didn't get in the way, anger didn't get in the way, frustration didn't get in the way. I made all of my decisions based on that. And I don't know if I'll ever be under as much pressure again, but I know that if I am, I can get through it sort of with that mantra that I hold very close.
I love that. I see stickers. And also, it's one of those things where I feel like, well, if you've gone through something like that, chances are probably high that you can do anything you want afterwards.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so the Connecticut Post had reported you saying that you received calls from all over the world for bookings less than a week after you were announced as a contestant. What about now? And what has the response been since you've been back?
Well, so there's sort of two different responses. One response has been that of places that want to book me to come and visit and perform. And that's been really incredible. I very quickly was booked all over the country, and I'm even going to be in London for a week, which is very exciting. And then other than that, there's the fan response. And although with any television show, there's going to be some people who are not super kind behind their keyboard anonymously. But by and large, I've had an incredible response from the fans, and a lot of people are reaching out to me and telling me that they identify with my story. And that's really incredibly special to me because I went in with the mentality of being extremely open and honest about my life and my struggles. And I've gotten messages from people in so many different countries saying that they identify with me. And that makes me feel so good.
That's amazing. And I think what's really poignant about the show is a lot of what you do resonate with people around the world. Like you just said, you hear from all kinds of fan bases. Tell our listeners who may not be too familiar with who Loosey LaDuca is. Who is Loosey LaDuca?
So Loosey is an array of things. First of all, I grew up in a very small town in Connecticut. I grew up in Ansonia. I still live in Ansonia. I think I want to say it's the second smallest city in the state. I might be making that up. Don't fact check me on that. But now, and with that, I wasn't really exposed to a lot of the arts here. I have a lot of hometown pride. I still live here for a reason, but it is very, a very sports centric place, like a lot of high schools are. And so that was sort of tough for me growing up, especially as a queer kid. And I felt sort of lost for a long time. But when I got a little older, I got into the world of theater. And for a lot of young queer people, that just opens up the entire world. And through that, I found drag, and it became something that I've done I'm now in my 13th year of drag. And to sort of combat that, the thing that really surprises people is that I've also done construction for just as many years as I've done drag. That's been my day job this entire time. So I have this sort of crazy dichotomy between my daytime job and my nighttime job.
Well, I think that's a really beautiful thing, and congratulations on being your 13th year. And you mentioned growing up in Ansonia, you didn't have a lot of exposure to the arts, but I read that you fell in love with musical theater at Ansonia Middle School. Can you talk about any particular performances in the moment that sort of led you to be like, oh my God, this is it?
Yeah. So in middle school, I was there when they sort of like experimented with bringing theater into Ansonia public schools, because it wasn't really something that as far as I knew, had really been around before. And so we had a great group of teachers headed by this incredible music teacher named Mrs. Chuka. She was my music teacher in elementary school. And she also was sort of at the helm of bringing musical theater into Ansonia. And we did, I believe the first show we did was Guys and Dolls. And I had never heard of it. I'd never seen the movie or anything. And I just fell in love with it. I just thought it was the most amazing thing. And I felt like I can use all of the skills that I knew that I had, because the one thing I've always been able to do is make people laugh ever since I was a kid. That's like if everybody has a gift, then that one is mine. And I was able to do that. And I realized, oh, wow, I really like making people laugh, especially on stage. And I've been doing it ever since.
Speaking of making people laugh, your Dolly Parton impersonation was incredible.
Howdy, y'all. It's me, Dolly Parton.
Not to mention your episode-winning Joan Rivers impersonation.
Johnny, we have missed you so much.
Oh, God, I haven't missed a single one of you.
These were just some of the characters you have channeled into the brunches you host at Hartford Cabaret Club Shea. Can you tell us more about what you know, and how did you build that talent?
Well, I've always, going along with making people laugh, I've always been doing impressions my whole life. I, have done impressions of my parents or my teachers or my friends or my siblings. And so then going into drag and celebrity impersonation being a big part of that, especially years ago, not so much now with how mainstream it is, but I noticed that I could do people's voices. I've always been able to do that. And so when it came to discovering that I could do Joan, I just thought, okay, well then this is it. This is my girl, because she is a comedy legend. She opened doors and still is opening doors, even after passing, for amazing female comedians. And she has the quickest wit I've ever seen. And if I could be half as quick as her, then I know that I've done my job.
On one episode of RuPaul's Drag Race, Loosey opened up about formative moments of discrimination and how her knack for humor is a part of her armor, too.
How long have you been out for?
Didn't come out until after high school, which really surprises people because I'm so out there now. But I actually still live in the town that I went to, like elementary and high school and stuff. And I'll be walking around my hometown and I'll be looked at like I don't belong there. born and
Just like
raised here.
based off of like the way that you look.
Based off the way, I mean, I like a short and I like a crop top.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I was ever called a I remember it really distinctly. I was in 6th grade. I remember exactly who it was. I heard teachers in my school join in on making fun of me. I used to just like hope and pray that I could just be normal. I just got to a point eventually after high school where it was like, I need to start actually living my life.
Right.
The only thing that I could do to get people to stop laughing at me was to get them to laugh with me. And so being bullied really helped me to hone in on my talent for comedy. And so now I've been able to take what used to be a defense mechanism, and now I've made a career out of it. I think the reason why I'm the way that I am, why I wear the crop top and I wear the short, is because I'm making up for lost time. I'm going to be as gay as they come.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And with Selena in the room, that's really hard. I live out loud and out proud wherever I go. I still have people ridicule me. The difference now is that I found my voice.
We asked Loosey why it was so important to share this experience on the show.
Well, I think that it's very easy for people to not think that hate exists if they haven't experienced it themselves. And so there are even a lot of people in my life who are wonderful and loving and supportive, but they might not know what I went through. So because they don't know that, they think that it doesn't exist.
Sure.
And I know that for me, my experience growing up in a small town is not uncommon at all. And a lot of times growing up as a queer kid, you really feel alone. And so I knew this is my time now to show people that although now I am confident and strong, that I had to go through a lot of hard times to get where I am now. And from that, I have gotten an explosion of messages from people saying, I identify with you so much. I'm going through that right now. Or I went through that when I was a kid. And seeing you tell your story has given me courage to tell my own. And that means more to me than having won the challenge. I mean, that makes me feel like I'm actually making a real difference in the world.
I think I always say this whenever I hear stories like this, because it's we're not happy that any one person has had to go through that. But you're right. It's if you haven't gone through it, maybe you would not be able to have these stories that now are resonating with your fan base. How does this conversation we're having now reflect on some of the current misunderstandings and harmful narratives being perpetuated about drag queens? Is that something you are aware of, or you try to keep updated on so you can help your fellow community members? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have a really hard time with everything that's going on right now. Unfortunately, queer people are not. I don't want to say that we're used to being targeted, but unfortunately, that is the truth. This is nothing new, but right now, drag performers in particular have a target on their backs. We're being used as a scapegoat, really, to deflect from the real issues that are going on not only in this country but in the entire world. And so I think it's that type of mob mentality of that person over there is the enemy. Don't look over here. That person over there is the problem. And so what's happening is we are being targeted as a community that wants to harm children, which is so infuriating to me, because I know that for me, having told my story, I'm getting messages from young people who are saying, I identify with you so much. And because I see you, I know that my life can get better. So what we're trying to do is actually help people. We're trying to enrich people's lives. And I think that anyone who says that drag shows are harmful, those people have never been to a drag show. And I encourage people to go and experience them for themselves to see what we really have to offer, as opposed to listening to these people who are just spewing hate.
Well, and speaking of which, I was going to ask, what would you say about the role of RuPaul's Drag Race that plays in demystifying drag and showcasing this as an art form and perhaps encouraging people who are not familiar with the space to check it out?
Well, I think that's exactly what it does. I think that it makes it much more accessible to people. Because years ago, before the show, you had to go to a show. And especially many years ago, the shows didn't start until maybe midnight. And so you had to be 21, you had to be able to stay up late. And so now you can turn on MTV, one of the biggest networks in the world, and it can just be on in your living room and you can see the art form. And what's really amazing is people can see how much work goes into it. Because a lot of people only see the finished product. They don't see the hours of makeup and sewing and crafting that goes into the final beautiful product.
I will say I'm one of those people that love behind the scenes stuff, and I really appreciate it because it doesn't take away the magic of the final product, like you're saying, but I appreciate so much of all the work that goes behind your shows and your performances. And I have to say, I don't know if I can even put makeup on for 5 hours and look amazing. So kudos to you and your skills and talent and your hours of hard work behind that.
Thank you so much.
I can't even balance my eyeliner, so we're working on that later. But I also wanted to touch on, you're such a force of support for many of the girls on the show and beyond. For example, you and the esteemed Sasha Colby were both there for contestants, and the twins Sugar and Spice when they got really emotional about their relationships with their family. Why is it so important to you to give and receive that kind of guidance and love?
Well, first of all, a major shout out to my sister, Sasha Colby, because she is just the most amazing, supportive person. And we really looked out for each other during the filming process. So much love to my sister, Sasha. It's really, really important for us as queer people to be supportive to those who are around us. A lot of people don't have the support of their families. Now, I am very, very lucky. I have a very supportive family, but my case is actually very rare. Several of the girls who were filming, their families didn't even know that they were there because their families have chosen not to speak to them. And because of that, what's amazing about the queer community is that we rally around people and we give them a family. So it's our job to do that. It's our job to be there for people who are going through a hard time because they can't rely on their own biological families to do so. And so we have this amazing concept of a chosen family. And that should not be just exclusive to the queer community. Anyone who has issues with their family, I just want to say, you get to choose exactly who your family is. You can choose anyone. Your best friends are your family. And so we take on those responsibilities that maybe were left by the wayside by people's actual families.
I know we have a very limited amount of time left. I do want to end by asking, with all these changes and everything that you've been through, how would you describe the Connecticut drag scene today? And what was it like seeing Connecticut put on the map in this way?
So it's been really incredible to be able to represent the Connecticut drag scene. It's really been an honor of mine. Something that frustrates me in particular is when people question if there really is a drag scene here. People will ask me, what goes on in Connecticut? Is there any drag? And I'll literally be standing there as a Connecticut resident wearing a wig. And I'm like, yep, there's drag there. I'm literally from there. And what's amazing about the Connecticut drag community is that it's huge and thriving. I mean, there are new drag performers. I'm not even kidding. Every single week, there are new drag performers. And that's supported by open stages like at the Shea in Hartford. And it really, it cultivates new performers. What's amazing about the Connecticut drag scene is that it's very eclectic. There's not one specific style that it sort of holds on to. You could see every type of performer within our tiny little state. And I encourage everyone to do their own research and find shows because there's shows every single weekend that you can go and experience yourself.
Loosey LaDuca, thank you so much for being on the show with us. It was our pleasure, and I hope you had a good time.
I had a wonderful time. Please have me back.
Oh, we will. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're listening to my conversation with Loosey LaDuca, one of the Connecticut contestants who competed on this season of RuPaul's Drag Race on MTV. My conversation with Hartford-based Robin Fierce is up next after a quick break. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Today, we're revisiting our conversations with two of the Connecticut contestants who just competed on this season of RuPaul's Drag Race on MTV. I had the pleasure of speaking with Hartford-based drag queen Robin Fierce mid-season. You can join the conversation. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So I just wanted to start off with, Robin, how are you feeling after taping this season? We're recording this Where We Live episode this Monday, January 23rd, right after episode 4 just aired. Obviously, no spoilers, but what kind of takeaways can you share with us now that you're back home?
It was definitely a roller coaster ride. And I think many of the girls in the past have described it as a pressure cooker, and that it definitely is. But not to be corny, but like diamonds are made with pressure. And I think that we just come out stronger after going through all of that.
Well, I love corn and I love corny. So I think you are in a safe space here with that. So did you go through are there any highs and lows that you've gone through that you feel like you've learned a lot from? You mentioning the roller coaster. I just can't imagine what you guys all have to go through.
I think we'll start on low and then go with the high. Low is I feel like the show makes you like face trauma that you might not have known that you had, whether that is like talking about it with a bunch of people who, yes, you all are friendly and cool while you're on the show, but basically strangers at the end of the day. And then also just the pressure of just pushing yourself to do things that you might not normally do. I think that's that's not necessarily a low, but I will say that is the hard part about the show, and it kind of puts you through it sometimes. But then the highs is some of these girls I probably would have never met not doing the show, and I think that I've made like genuine friends. Some of the girls I talk to like almost every day. And then, like I said before, like once you come out of it, like you are just an overall better performer, better artist for it. So I'm very thankful. And of course, all the people who come out and support after seeing the show too is super amazing.
I think that's really beautiful because I feel the same way with people I connect with, either as a reporter or through this show. It's just people that I would never imagine I would have the privilege to speak with. And so, from your highs and your lows and what you just shared, was there anything new that you learned about yourself? Like things that you were doing, you're like, oh my God, I can do this, or the opposite?
At first I thought I didn't really learn anything. Because, I've been doing drag for a little bit. I haven't been doing it the longest on the cast, but I'd like to believe that I was a fully formed, fledged drag queen by the time that I got on the show. But then thinking about it after and like reflecting on, especially what's already been seen, watching it back, I could see where I could push a little bit more or do something a little bit different so that I'm still growing, even though one is a full-fledged artist. There's always room to grow. So yeah, a lot of people describe me as like regal or whatever. So the phrase that I tend to use when thinking about it is, yes, I can sit on my throne and be regal, but it's okay to explore the kingdom and try other things that you might not have known was in your kingdom.
I love that. Just remember us peasants every once in a while, please. What has it been like since the show premiered? We know you've been hosting shows and watch parties around the tri-state area. How has that changed for you?
Definitely more people come out to the shows, which is always nice. I felt like I was going to have this whole paradigm shift of like what it was going to be after the show, but I really, for the most part, feel like the same as a person. Of course, like going out into the world is different. There is more of a fan base than I even had before, which is nice. But I'm definitely excited about traveling more. I think that's like going to be the biggest difference. After this week, I'll be traveling every week, which is definitely going to be an adjustment, but I'm excited.
And your hometown is Hartford, but can you tell us the places that you grew up in Connecticut? I think you've been around in the state.
Yes. Overall, Hartford County. So my family is from Brooklyn, and we moved here when I was 5 for my dad's work. And we lived in Rocky Hill. He got promoted. Then we moved to South Windsor. Then, I mean, we love Rocky Hill and South Windsor, but those were not my favorite places to grow up, only because I was like either one of one or one of 3 Black people in my grade. So it was it was definitely interesting being the minority and not being seen like the other people in my class was. But then my parents got a divorce, and then I went to Manchester, and then for school I went to Two Rivers in East Hartford. And that is where like I really discovered my appreciation for diversity because they brought kids from all over Connecticut. So it wasn't just me, and it was a whole bunch of other people, and I got introduced to a whole bunch of other cultures. So I know I'm like veering off the question a little bit, but like my love of diversity comes from going to school at Two Rivers and like meeting all of these different people. And then very soon after we moved to Hartford, and for the most part, I've been here since high school.
No, we love veering. Veering is very good here. And so, I mean, I love that you mentioned diversity. It's something that it's in conversation a lot recently from all over the place, and everything is so connected with each other. And I love that you mentioned that as part of your non-experience earlier in your life, but it came sort of fully fledged later on. Did you have that catalyst moment of this is what I want to do, or were you introduced to this scene and you're like, I want to be a part of this? Like, share with us how you got started in this scene.
Well, I came out when I was like 19 going on 20. But before that, I thought that drag was very strange because I didn't understand it. And also I didn't understand myself. So anything that was ununderstandable to me, making up words, just made me uncomfortable, which I think speaks to the greater scheme of the world. Sometimes when we don't understand ourselves, it makes it hard to understand other people as well. But came out, and then I kind of dove into queer culture and started watching Drag Race. I am a product of Drag Race, and I'm watching the show and having a good time and realizing that these people that are doing drag are no more weird than me or my friends. So like, it's not something to be like super weird or uncomfortable about. And then I started practicing my makeup. I probably practiced my makeup for 6 months before I finally like actually stepped out into the world, which is different for a lot of queens. I feel like they like, oh my gosh, I want to do drag. I'm gonna just throw it on and hit the road, which is fine. It's fine. If you're gonna do drag, you might as well dive in. But I'm like, I want to look good the first time I go out and all that stuff. I still looked crazy, and it's okay. But yeah, there's no 18 plus clubs in Connecticut. So I would go to Ego in Rhode Island because they are 18 plus, because I was still 20 at the time. So I would go probably at least once a month and go in drag to Ego, and then see the RuPaul's Drag Race girls because they would go there all the time. And then when I did turn 21, I started doing like little competitions here in Connecticut. I got my first gig in Springfield. And then I started doing more stuff here. And each year I would look at like my calendar. And the first year, no paid gigs, scattered throughout the year. The second year, I feel like there was at least one paid gig every month, and then the next it was multiple, and then eventually it was like every weekend. So I think it just turned into me doing something that I love, and then also slowly making it into a source of income. Granted, when I first started, not a lot of income to be had, so I still had like my full-time jobs or part-time jobs and stuff like that to like sustain. But yeah, it's kind of, I guess I kind of fell into it and then fell in love with it.
You're listening to my conversation with Robin Fierce, who recently competed on the latest season of RuPaul's Drag Race. We'll continue the conversation after a quick break. You can join us. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shin. You're listening to my conversation with Robin Fierce, a Hartford-based drag queen featured in the latest season of RuPaul's Drag Race. I asked how this persona developed over time into the queen we know now as Robin Fierce. Take a listen.
My persona, I think I fell into it because I like the grandioseness of life, and I feel like that's kind of what I portray. Like in my introduction, I kind of introduced myself, I did introduce myself as if Mariah Carey, Beyonce, and Diane Carroll had a baby. That would be me. I feel like the grand diva-dumbness is like from the Mariah Carey and the appearance of Diane. But then if you watch interviews with Diane Carroll, like she's always joking with them. So she doesn't really take herself super seriously, but people take her seriously. And I feel like I connect with that. And then also just performing wise, I actually didn't grow up like dancing, and I always thought that I could not dance, and everything that I know performance wise has come from just doing drag. So if I'm not perfect at something, it's because I literally taught myself how to do these things. So I connect with Beyonce kind of in like that way. But I think the overall essence of my drag is like powerful women. And I think that is super amazing. And yeah.
Well, and then I was going to mention that you mentioned diva and grandness and grandioseness. We're making up words today. You do go by Connecticut's Grand Diva. So why was it so important to represent where you live?
Okay, first, I have never said Grand Diva in my life before before getting on the show. Like they ask you to describe yourself, and I'm not the best with describing myself. Contrary to popular belief, all drag queens do not talk about themselves all the time.
Well, we are giving you this opportunity today, so.
So that came out of nowhere. I originally actually, when I described myself as the auntie of Connecticut. I am like that rich auntie that like pops in and all the kids love, but they only really see during the holidays because at least here, I would travel a lot. So I would do a bunch of shows here in Connecticut, but I would also do like New York, New Hampshire, like tri-state area moment. So that's why I always describe myself as that. But back to the main question. I think it's important. It is more important than I even realized It was, and I didn't realize how important it was until after I did the show. Of course, I thought it was amazing that Connecticut finally got representation, because there aren't many things that we even get representation. And I think right now all we have, or before this, all we really had was the fact that WWE was in Stanford. And I think Jerry Springer was filmed in Connecticut. And then maybe a mention on Gossip Girl or something like that. But it's always important to have representation. And it's nice that the world gets to see that Connecticut, just like anywhere else, has talented people. And at least for me, my specific representation is a queer Black person in Connecticut, which I think is also amazing as well, to be able to represent that and be one of the first people from Connecticut on the show. But yeah, seeing everybody's reactions and how it's made the drag community as a whole in Connecticut step it up even more. Like, we were already doing drag. There was drag all over Connecticut, especially in Hartford County and Fairfield County. But now, for them seeing that it's possible, we all have wanted it, but to actually see that it's possible to be on this huge platform, it pushes people in a way that they might not have even known that they needed, which I appreciate getting to be a part of that.
Well, I love that you share that too, because I'm pretty new to Connecticut. I'm originally from California. I moved to Connecticut about 3 years ago. And so you're right. It's really important to put sort of a location pin on the state that you're from or your hometown, because I have to be honest, you mentioning Gossip Girl and all of the other references, the only reference I had as a Californian for Connecticut is honestly Gilmore Girls. So,
or maybe it was Gilmore Girls. I forget.
Yeah.
References, yeah.
No, and I love this conversation because it's so wonderful learning about Connecticut and Hartford County through your experience, because everyone's experience is so unique and different. And, while we're on that, you're traveling all over the place now. You've done this amazing show and had these ridiculous experiences. What has it been like going back to your hometown club, Shea, in Hartford?
It's always so welcoming. And it always has been, but to see the outpour of like all the extra love and all that stuff, Connecticut as a whole is super excited for all three of us to be on the show right now. Like, they are the literal definitions of ride or die. If people come for us on the internet, they are up in arms. So being able to go back to bars that I have worked at pretty much my whole drag career, and seeing the continuation of support, seeing people who have been there from the beginning, seeing people that just got there all come together and really cheer on Connecticut drag is amazing. Even if we do terrible on the show, I know for a fact that Connecticut will still cheer for us and still say, if we are eliminated, that we were robbed. And if we win, we knew it from the beginning, they deserved. So it's nice to have that extra support.
That's the attitude to have. And I will say, when I heard the word Connecticut, it did something to me. I don't know what it was, but I was like, oh my God, Connecticut, that's where I live now. So I guess from your experience, has the Connecticut scene responded to the show?
Yeah, for sure. I'm hoping that the thing with Connecticut, which I think one thing that me, Loosey, and Amethyst have gotten were, oh my gosh, I didn't even know there was drag in Connecticut. Which the thing is, like, drag has always been in Connecticut, in maybe smaller sections of Connecticut, have always had drag. Now I think we definitely have a lot more drag queens, even from when I started. I feel like there's a new drag queen every other weekend, which is amazing. But I think, and what I hope will change is us having more venues. So there are only so many places in Connecticut. There's the Shea in Hartford, there's Partners, York Street, and Gotham in New Haven. I think that's all of them. There might be one more. And then in Fairfield, there's Trevi and Troop, which I also worked at Troop for a long time. But with as many drag queens that we have, there aren't always spaces for them to perform consistently and perform with pay consistently. So I'm hoping that with this new eye on Connecticut, that would encourage more venues as a whole to be like, oh, we should do a drag show for a brunch or a dinner show, whether it's at a restaurant or a corporate thing, like, oh, let's have drag queen bingo for our little corporate event moment. I hope that comes a little bit more, because there's college shows, there's brunch shows, there's club shows, there's so many different things that drag queens can do. Even if we're not performing, we can host, we can sing, we can dance. Drag is probably one of the most universal, eclectic, and diverse talent scope in the entertainment industry, to me. I might be biased, but to me.
Well, it sounds like sky is the limit, and the experience is so varied. And I love that you shared, your earlier personal days growing up, and then realizing this is something you want to do, and you're so enthusiastic, and I love the energy that you bring, because you're right. By being sort of on camera, literally, you're also welcoming and embracing people who want to be a part of this or want to learn about this. But unfortunately, there's also the flip side too, right? We know that drag queens have recently become the target of really harmful anti-LGBTQ narratives, and it's a part of a wider wave of protest and legislation and violent cases, unfortunately. So I want to ask, what would you say about the role of RuPaul's Drag Race that plays in sort of demystifying drag and showcasing this as an art form, as you have mentioned earlier?
I think with Drag Race specifically, it shows the fun of drag, and also what is possible with drag. Because on Drag Race, like, you're not always doing the things that drag queens do normally in the world. You're doing sketch comedy shows. You might see like a random campy group number, which also does happen, but not every drag queen does that all the time. So you're seeing a bunch of different facets of what drag can be, what drag can do. But at the end of the day, it is really just fun. And it is work for us, but it's also fun. And we're not trying to be nefarious. We're not trying to do all of these malicious things that people are making it out that we are doing, especially with like the drag queen story hours and stuff. I've done many a drag queen story hours, and it's literally me reading a book and these children thinking that I'm a princess. Like, that is literally all it is. And most of the books we are reading are either just these random fun kids books or kids books about like love and acceptance of all people, which is always going to be an amazing thing to have, and to accept yourself. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier. And it's kind of like what RuPaul says: if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? And really, even before RuPaul, I knew RuPaul saying that. I came to the realization, like I was saying earlier, when I accepted myself, I can accept other people. So, yeah, drag for anybody out there is for fun. It is love. It is light. And RuPaul's Drag Race shows the people behind the drag, and it makes it less scary. So watch RuPaul's Drag Race on MTV every Friday at 8 p.m.
That was a beautiful plug. And I was going to say, did you correct princess? It's queen, not princess. So I just wanted to ask, fellow drag queen Loosey LaDuca recently shared her experience being bullied growing up in Ansonia, Connecticut, while on the show. What would you share with us about your own experience growing up in Connecticut?
My experience is kind of boring in comparison. I mean, I think that there was definitely bullying that happened, but I'm a person that is so in my own world sometimes that, yeah, I would hear things here and there. And I wasn't out, but people would assume I was gay anyway. And look at me away or say little things to themselves. But like I said, I'm more concerned with what it is that I want to do in life. So I always focused on what made me happy and having a good time. Also, I was friends with most of the girls, and the guys that would make fun of me wanted to be with the girls that I was friends with. So they wouldn't openly just be horrendous to me because I was friends with the people that they wanted. So any queer babies out there, make friends with the hot girls and once will leave you alone. No, I'm kidding. The real advice is there is always going to be somebody that has something to say. And it will affect you. But at the end of the day, you have to still do what makes you happy, because you letting their voices, and this is even something that I have to remember now, being more in the public eye and everybody having opinions, you have to do what you do for you and don't be afraid to do that. And if for whatever reason you are changing minds, it's going to be because you are living your life authentically. My family, I'm the first out queer person in my family, so they wouldn't accept any of that before me, and they're still learning. But just be yourself no matter what, because like I said, somebody's always going to have something to say, so don't let them get in your way, and they need to accept themselves, and maybe that's why they're bullying you too. So yeah.
Well, it's always a process, and that's a wonderful sentiment, I think, to start the week and the year, really. And so one more question for you. We hit on so many lovely thoughts, and I'm so glad to have you here to share your experience. Is there anything else you want to share that you haven't had a chance to talk about?
I will say support your local artists, your local drag queens, for any queer people or even allies or whatever. Go out to your local queer bars, because we all love to have fun and see the drag queens and all the shows and stuff. But if you're not supporting the venues that support us, then you're going to be very upset and sad when you cannot see the people that you want to see, because things shut down when they are not making money. So support. There are so many drag queens in Connecticut, more than even just the 3 that y'all see on TV. We have all worked together, and we are all amazing in our own ways. So you never know who's going to be your next favorite drag queen, and that next favorite drag queen doesn't necessarily have to be a televised drag queen. So yeah.
Well, Robin Fierce, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I know you're very busy, so it's my privilege to be able to make this happen, and good luck to you.
Of course. I could talk to y'all all day.
I love it.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Katie Pellico. Our technical producer is Kat Pastor. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. And thank you so much for listening.
Walk how you feel like it. If you can.